Esther Choy, founder of Leadership Story Lab. And I just gave you, Esther, I just gave you the hosting rights. So if you'd join me on air, I would love to see you here. And Esther will share how the Chief Story Officer is somebody who is in every one of us. Welcome to the conference. Lovely to have you.
Hello, hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Most importantly,
I can hear it and see you.
You can. All right. And you can hear me and see me. Yes, we are then 90% there. Atom, thank you so much for having me again. Before I begin, I must say that I think, how do I say this? I practiced this morning and now I'm a little nervous. I am truly grateful to you. And I think I say this on behalf, I'm bold enough to say that I can say it on behalf of a lot of people around the world. Without your consistent, persistent, tireless, dogged entrepreneurial effort to put something like this on over and over and over again. I don't know. I truly think that this is the world would be less bright, more pessimistic, and less informed. And so, thank you so much for doing this, first of all. And the rest of us, you plan a big party. The rest of us just show up and have fun.
That's so kind.
So
Thank you so
kudos
much.
to you. But please don't mute yourself because if it's okay, as we discussed before, I'm going to toss out some questions to you, ask you to chime in from time to time. Ladies and gentlemen, poor Adam has no preparation whatsoever for this. This is my show, but I'm just gonna ask him as a friend, as a colleague, to chime in from time to time. So as he mentioned, feel free to show my slide now. As Atom mentioned, that my talk is about the chief storyteller in every leader. And I don't want to crowd out this beautiful cover page, but every official and unofficial leader. And so what I want to talk about is something that whether you have a formal assignment or responsibility or role or not, that we all have a question of, or have a duty of, that will in turn make our lives quite a bit easier. So if you can move to the next slide. This is a video. And this is only a 30-second video, but it really anchors and captivates what my talk is going to be about. So if it's okay, if you can play that video now.
An event, seen from one point of view, gives one impression. Seen from another point of view, it gives quite a different impression. But it's only when you get the whole picture you can fully understand what's going on.
Great, thank you. I get goosebumps every time I watch this video because I can think of every time I read about news, especially international news, especially since I am based in the US. I can think about every time I had a discussion, especially a disagreement with someone. I can think of countless examples of it's only when you get the full picture can we truly understand what's going on. And so as leader, whether we are chief storyteller or telling officer or not, how can we help everyone get the full picture? Next slide, please. Oh, actually, sorry, I found the advanced slide button. I would do it myself. So an effective leadership communication is about telling and discovering stories that give you and your team the full picture. Now, I realize that the emphasis in so many practitioners, all of us who will be having a chance to talk at this conference, all the books and all the articles focus so much on the first one, the telling. Tell it well, tell it timely, tell it briefly. The library of these books are plentiful. However, I realized that discovering is just as important, if not sometimes more important. And so, what I would like to focus on is not so much the storytelling, but the story discovering. And just lo and behold, I was very pleasantly surprised at the start of this year, 26, when I got an invitation from Autumn to speak at this event that I was about to publish my second book, which was published 2 weeks ago. And very lucky to have a lot of advance acknowledgement. Um, and so I've just clipped the ones that I feel like it's most relevant to this talk. And that is one of the CMO of a large website company says I really flipped the script on storytelling. And then perhaps you've heard of the book Designing Your Life, borrowing design thinking, and think about how designers design products like Steve Jobs, and think about how you can use the same tools and framework to design your life. And that's Dave Evans was very kind to say that, this is finally a spot on book, and it's about creating meaningful change, but that requires lean in curiosity. And so when you think about what would allowed us to have lean in curiosity is the idea that we have to ask questions, not only consciously and constantly asking questions, but it's asking crazy good questions. And I would love to practice this with everyone. That also hopefully would allow us to get to a different point of view with our family member, our friends, our community, and our teams, and maybe even the world. So the reason why I like showing this video over and over again is it gets to the gist of why ask questions. Because we all start out life or situations or a plan or a partnership. The list is endless. We all start out with the partial pictures, but oftentimes we aren't aware that what we see isn't what we get until someone hopefully give us a prompt, give us a really crazy good questions that allow us to all of a sudden see, oh, really? There's more to this from this random strange man running on some random streets to, oh, maybe the reason why he's running is that he's maybe trying to steal the briefcase from this poor man. And it's very human to believe what we see and what we hear. And it is very human to focus all our attention and energy to what we see and what we can tell. And that's why it's also understandable why we have so many books about, hey, think about your experience, what you can see, what you hear, what you experience, and then telling part. But it is not again until someone help us point our focus to a different angle do we really see the full pictures? Do we really understand what's going on? And so the reason why of asking great questions, questioning all the time, is that as leaders, The ultimate burden and privilege isn't to be the one person with the right answer, with the visions, and trying to convince people to come along. I think the ultimate privilege of a leader is that we get to frame the story. And by framing the story, we get to define what is the right problem to solve. And then we get to focus our team's attention and energy. And so it is the transformation of seeing differently. Yes, we have goals, we have transactions that we need to lead and complete. But more importantly, in the process of leading and completing transactions, our superpower is in guiding people to see differently. That's the transformation of it. So I want to show you a scenario um, that will allow us to dive deeper into asking great, crazy good questions. So every spring, all over university campus in the United States, alumni from all over the world, as well as within the US, travel back to their alma mater for reunion. That happens every single year. We have, last count, close to 4,000 university campuses. So imagine how often people are traveling, coming together to reconnect with their classmates. So what happened during these usually weekends reunion? Well, lo and behold, a lot of storytelling, a lot of, I would say, questioning, but they are more afterthought. And here's a very common pattern. You tend to have this, at least in the States, we like small talks. So we have a lot of, hey, how are you? A long time no see. How have you been? Tell me everything. Where have you been since the last time we saw you? Those are ice-breaking questions. That's not only really directed at people we hadn't seen in a long time, but is just another way for us to say hello. We don't really want to know how you are. We just have a very long-winded way of saying hello in the form of how are you. Now, because we're humans, humans practice reciprocity. And so we tend to mirror the questions. We tend to say, oh, someone is saying hello to me, greetings, ice breaking. So I mirror. I would say, oh, someone asked me, how are you? I said, good, how are you? And then a lot of small talk ensues. And then we'll, until someone get tired of small talk or get some inspirations and then ask, hey, are you still considering retiring early? And then there will be more talking following that until someone in the conversation is tired of it, ready to move on, then they would ask different questions, such as, what do you miss most when you're not working? And those are discovering questions. So here are a bunch of questions. I'm going to give you some time to read it. I have purposely not give it a label. These are questions that people have submitted to me is that I present at my alma mater for the past 15 years. And I wanted to see, I don't know if you have ability to uh, ask the audience if anyone would be interested in submitting a guess as to if you were to label this type of questions, what would you call it? Feel free to put it in the chat. And Autumn, I think where someone can translate quickly. I hope somebody can. Yeah, Oksana, discovering. Anyone, any other guess? It's pretty close. Discovering. Okay, if anybody want to type in any guesses as to how would you categorize this group of questions? Exploring from Anna. Yeah, exploring, discovering. Yeah, I would say that's both are quite close. This is conversational, um, curious. Yeah, yay, they're coming. Okay. Uh, Out of curiosity, to start conversation, to discover, to explore. Um, First Russian. I don't know, but it allows you to know the person more as a person. Yes, open-ended questions. I see. Um, I don't know what drains me. Small talk. Yes, me too. Um, so I would call this category recounting and reflecting. The key thing with this category is that it prompts the other person to recount, recall, but not just in a, oh, this is what happened, and then this happened, and then this happened in a chronological way, but reflecting on what it means. Now, your favorite dinosaur, that's kind of random. I don't know where that come from, but that's what you get when you take a sample from real input data. Okay, so discovering, curiosity, recounting, reflecting. Now, here's the second. Give you a moment to read it. And then I'll ask, if you were to give this category a title, a label, what would you call it? Relation building? Yeah. About future self. Yeah. Imagine the future. Uh-huh. Okay, so um, Autumn, Anna, Amand, and Maria, preferences, Oksana, insightful questions, visioning. Um, yeah. So versus the first column, recounting and reflecting, which is turning our gaze solely in the past, based on what happened, recount some of it, but reflect upon what it means. Column two is solely about imagining and desiring. So, yes, it's completely future oriented. Now we turn our gaze from the past to the future, but not only that, we're asking future questions based on what would you have loved to have happen but has not happened yet. Okay, great. We're doing great. Now, one last column. And these questions looks like this. Philosophical. Yeah. The universe is a grand design. Why do all mammals need sleep? Almost philosophical and a little spiritual, but that's not all though. Yeah, Oksana agrees. That's philosophical. How would you define a successful life? Anyone else? Unframing. Huh, interesting. Um, can you say more about that, Armin? Hey, Jeff. Each column seems to dig a little deeper. Oh, yes, for sure. And Armin, I don't know if you are okay. What do you mean by unframing? And I can't see Armin, so if anyone else want to guess, Seeing from new perspective. And framing or reframing. Okay, I got it. Okay, thought-provoking for sure. Also, further scope. Hmm. Proclamation. Ooh, interesting word, Anna. So how there's no right or wrong answers, by the way. I am curious about how you would categorize these questions as much as I would love to share how I would call them. And so with this column, I would call them pontificating and proclaiming. So Anna, that's why um, they help to formulate and put in wordsmiths. Exactly. Because when you talk about universe, when you talk about what is your story, if you have to put your message on a billboard, right? So it requires that wordsmithing, but not before doing some deep dive, thought provoking reflections and pontificating, and then proclaiming what is your story. So, why is it important? Is it definitely not semantic? It is definitely not because we have extra free time, so we can see how we can categorize things. In order for us to be curious, in order for us to ask questions in ways that actually get people to move their gaze from one frame to the other so that it allows them to see people and event and situations that are outside of their frame, we have to be very cognizant, if not becoming a connoisseur of questions. And so imagine if you go to a restaurant and you would like someone to recommend you wine, and then the sommelier showed up, and then she said, "Oh, wine. Wine's a great idea. Wine goes well with dinner. Any wine is good." Well, that's not false, but it's also entirely unhelpful. What would be helpful is if not only is the sommelier obviously very knowledgeable, but they know categories of wines, they know the flavor, the body and texture, whatever, and then they can make informed recommendations. So it's that level of becoming what connoisseur of question asking that would allow you to ask questions in ways that help people to see through a different frames. Anyone is good sounds very professional. That was probably a bad example. But anyway, so let's ask some crazy good questions, shall we? There are 10 types, and I've outlined them in my book, and I'm happy to also share a handout. Um, I don't know how accessible since my book was just released in the US 2 weeks ago. So I can definitely share a handout. This is something that I talk about extensively. And on the surface, these 10 types are just pretty straightforward. Um, it might even seem easy, simple, but it's not easy. It's simple, but not easy. So let me give you some examples. This is an example. What was a mistake that you made in your life that turned out to be for the better? What type of story, what type of questions would it be? Well, it would be surprise because we we condition ourselves to call mistake as something negative. But a mistake that turned out to be better then would then surprise. And that also is compare and contrast over time. How could something being a negative thing turn out to be more for the positive? Okay. Second example. What's one thing in 2025 that you could use more or less of in 2026? And why? Obviously, this is a why question. It's also prompting people to think, reflect, maybe a little pontification, comparing contrast 2 years. But in doing so, you get the other person to tell you what's the takeaway. 2 more examples. What's something from your professional life you're very proud of, but haven't included in your CV, resume, LinkedIn bio, whatever that be? What type of questions is that? Well, this one would be surprise again. It would be a great question to elicit more. It also get the person to tell you more about the self. And last, this is one of my all-time favorite questions. I encourage everybody to think about this for yourself, for real. And the last one is, what was one of the best things you've done just because you were told, no, you can't? The type of questions this is the greatest, but also a different path. And then it also gets to the self. Now, regardless of what type of questions it may be, what I call these questions are plot twisting question. Okay. Something that was a mistake, but turned out to be for better. Something that happened that in 1 year that you could use more or less of. Something that you're really proud of in a work, but you haven't really broadcasted it. Well, why? Why not? And then the last one is the best thing you've done just because you were told you can't. So plot twisting questions in effect is embedding a story prompting question. So instead of asking, Autumn, can you please tell me your greatest leadership story? Not wrong again, but also you're placing the entire burden of a good storytelling on Autumn. And instead, if you ask something like, what's one of the best thing you've ever done, especially because you were told you can't? Then what we're inviting, in effect, is asking Autumn to share a conflict or a contrast or even a contradictions. These really essential element in storytelling without setting off to ask him to put the burden on him to tell me the greatest stories ever. Well, I know Autumn can, but I also know a lot of people can't. So let's shift the burden on the leader, on the person asking the questions, because the better the question you asked, then the better the story you'll get, and the more likely you're going to help everyone to shift their frame of seeing. All right, so these are the 10 types of questions. And now is perfect time to take a practice. We're here because of Autumn and his team working tirelessly to put on 3 days of expertise and topics from people from around the world. So let's take a look at this grand schedule. That's a lot. And that's not even everything. It's just today and tomorrow. So, Autumn, thank you for putting this together. What I'm going to ask everybody in the room to do is follow along, Artem, including yourself, if you're comfortable. Pick one that if you weren't working in the conference, that you are very unlikely going to attend. Okay, so that's step one. So I did this exercise with a friend, and then he picked on May 22nd, around halfway through the list, how to preserve brand DNA when there are 7,000 of you. So that's just him, just one choice. Okay. So I hope everybody, this shouldn't be hard. Just pick one that you are not planning on attend. Okay, Autumn, do you have yours?
It's hard to
I know
choose.
you're at all of them, and you know all of them.
Well, just out of for the case of the experiment, I would choose I don't know, ethical storytelling. Just let's
Okay,
play with it.
perfect. Okay, let's play with it. Okay, so we have ethical storytelling, and then we have the brand DNA one. So What I like you then to think about is a very brief reason why. Why not? So for my friend, he is planning to attend this conference, but he's not interested in that particular one because he just started his company, and his company consists of 2 people. And so he's not personally interested. He's a finance person, so he's not interested in brand, number 1. And 2, 7,000. That sounds interesting, but it's not relevant to him, his situation right now. So those are the reasons. So I'd like you to, just for the sake of this experiment, think of very briefly, why not?
Should I say it out loud?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm imagining myself to be some sort of a corporate professional who would say something like, I don't need it to be ethical. I need it to be effective, efficient, and
Mm,
valuable.
okay. Yeah. So that's great, because I would say, if I were to put myself in that situation, I would say, I'm already a very ethical person. I know how to be ethical, so I don't need to attend a session to be ethical, right? Okay. So, so this is why I want everybody to think about. Now, step 1, you pick one that you aren't planning on attending. Step 2, state a very brief reason why not. Okay. Now, step 3 is try to use one of these 10 or more of these 10 crazy good question types to ask yourself that may allow you to look at this session that you weren't going to attend, give you a different frame to look at it. Okay, so back to my friend's example. He asked, well, my company is 2 people. Some companies are 7,000 plus people. Are there something in the brand DNA of 7,000 people that is actually the same as a company of 2 people? So, Autumn, how would you use one of these questions type to ask yourself a question about?
Maybe I would ask myself, was there a time when I was surprised that adding ethics to the matter made it more resultful, so to speak, not less?
Mm, yeah, yeah, that's a great one. By the way, surprise is one of those questions, and number 1, the origin as well is the easiest to use, because if you can't think of anything, you can just ask, what's one of the biggest surprise, Artem, after all these years of planning this conference? I just created that, but based on surprise. Or I could say, Artem, do you remember is there a moment, or is there someone or conversations that prompted you the idea of, this is a good idea to plan a conference, and I would be the one doing it? Okay, so those 2 are fairly easy to use. So with the last 3 minutes, I would, oh, and then the back to the ethical questions. I would love to ask, actually, I know how to be ethical, I think. I know how to be ethical, but are there ways where I can show people whether they can or cannot be ethical to all agree on? What do we mean by ethical, and how do we make sure that every single person is practicing and rowing the same direction? See, so now all of a sudden, looking at a session that looked like, I already know how to do it. It's just not really the best use of my time. I'd rather do this than allow me to see differently and add value to it that I hadn't considered before. So, with the remaining 2 minutes, is that crafting that story to review is that let's all do our best, even if our title is not chief story officers. We can all help each other capture the full pictures by, yes, telling the stories, but also discovering the story. And love to keep in touch with everyone. If there's anything that I can help you with, LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to reach out. But in the handout that I'm going to send Artem, that is also another way to stay in touch. And yes, my website is leadershipstorylab.com. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, it's been lovely, and I can already see the fire glowing in the corner for you. Thank you. Oh,
Thank you. Thank you.
that's a great practice, and I wish I could do it like in full experience, but I'm really into this talks, so thank you for this experiment.
Thank
So
you.
Esther,
Thank you.
I'm not going to leave you before I ask you the traditional question. So
Mhm.
story can be applied, as you just showed, for various ways in organizations. But what if there was just one way you could use it in an organization? Which way or which area would you choose, and why?
Thank you for reminding me. So, if everyone can choose one situation, one scenario, one person, in fact, in which where we can give less advice but ask more questions. So, one scenario, one person where we can give less advice or speak less and ask more questions, then I think that would make the most meaningful difference.
Oh, that's lovely. Story for prompting more meaningful questions. Thank you so much. These fires are
Thank you.
burning for you. Let's thank
Thank you.
Esther for
Thank you.
her practical talk, and thank you for coming again this year. It was lovely.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for doing this again, Autumn.